Hi again then guys, and so it's been quite a while since I did an updated version of a top 10 or say top 25 list of my favourite cars, and a few times, especially in Q&As, some of you guys have expressed an interest in some of my favourite cars. I talk about some of them occasionally, but I never really lay them out in an actual list and explain why I love them so much. So in this list we've gone for 25, primarily because it's not too long, but at the same time it gives a little bit more detail than just a top 10, because there are so many cars that I absolutely love that a top 10 just wouldn't be fair to the ones who almost made it in. Some of these cars are also kind of representative of an overall model range rather than just a specific car. And our 25th spot is the perfect example of this. I'm a huge fan of the Corvette. My favourite overall would have to be the 4th generation ZR-1, because for its time, and even by today's standards, it's a technically advanced and seriously quick car, and it just looks so cool as well. In 24th place, a car which represents an end of an era, my favourite Le Mans car of all time, the Nissan R92CP. This car was the last in so many ways. It was the last of the insanely high turbocharged Le Mans cars. In fact, it was the most powerful ever, 1200 horsepower in qualifying form. It was the last of the long-tail Group C monsters. And it was one of the quickest ever, around 250 miles per hour around Fuji, immense amounts of downforce, and just an effortlessly cool machine, essentially, even though it didn't actually win the Le Mans. In 23rd place, the Ford GT40, or the Super Performance GT40 as an overall model range. I've always loved the GT40, and my favourite would have to be the 1969 shape in Gulf livery. The slightly more rounded back end, just a perfect classic racing car. In 22nd place, a car which is on the list more because I respect it rather than necessarily love its design. A car which is pretty well known to any Gran Turismo player, the Chaparral 2J. Now the 2J was a revolutionary car, for any who don't know. From 1970 it used fans to suck it to the road to give incredible amounts of downforce and grip regardless of speed. Now the concept was refined even further in 1978 by Brabham, but this is the original, and as such it deserves a place on the list. In 21st place, another car which never really got the chance, a car which I'm a huge fan of, the TVR Blackpool Beast, as it's called, the Cerbera Speed 12. And it's a real shame that this car never got the chance to prove just how quick it was, because I believe it could have definitely beaten the McLaren F1. It was lighter, more powerful, and certainly looks more aerodynamic. I'm not certain if it is, but it's just a shame that it never got that opportunity to even try. In 20th place, another car which, like the Chaparral, is here more out of respect. I believe this to be one of the best cars ever made in terms of what you get as an overall all-round package. The car is of course the Tesla Model S, specifically the P90D. What you get from this car is just incredible, and it's very difficult to find a vehicle which can actually match up to just how much equipment and tech you get from this model. It has a great price considering how fast and well equipped it is. It has around a 300-mile range, it can seat 7 people, but it also has more power than a Zonda R and can accelerate as quickly as a Lamborghini Aventador. It's all-wheel drive, which means it can be used in any weather, and it's just cool. It has an amazing interior, it's relatively understated as far as design, and they're known for being good cars. People love to hate them, but I couldn't care less about that. In 19th place, the ISO Grifo. Relatively underappreciated by many petrol heads purely because they've probably never heard of it for the most part, but a fantastic classic GT car. One of the fastest classic cars of all time, around 186 miles per hour. It uses American power, combines that with Italian design, which I think is fantastic to combine the best of both worlds. It looks fantastic, kind of like a Jensen Interceptor, but even better, and they fetch phenomenal prices these days, which is a real reflection of just how cool and brilliant, as an all-round classic, these cars are. In 18th place, another kind of representative model. I'm a huge fan of the Cobra overall, and the Daytona is such a beautiful car as far as I'm concerned, possibly my favourite classic in terms of just its design. And I love the Daytona in all of its forms. The Super Performance Daytona, the original Shelby, the Brock Daytona, and even the electric version, the Renovo. I love them all. In 17th position is perhaps a strange choice, considering that I'm not really a huge fan of the ultimate fastest cars in the world. Many of the cars on this list aren't anywhere near the fastest in the world. But there's just something about this car, which is of course the SSC Ultimate AERO, which appeals to me. I kind of like that the car has an almost old school charm to it. It manages to match the brutality of the Hennessy Venom with a slightly more refined, comfortable and well-equipped level of luxury that you'd expect more from a Koenigsegg or a Veyron. Kind of like a middle ground between the two, and I like that. It also has slightly more of a feeling of obscurity and exclusivity, which I really like as well. Plus it can do 258 miles per hour, which isn't exactly a knock against it. In 16th place, the Saleen S7. I consider this to be the best American supercar ever made. America has a lot of strong supercars, and this is an incredible one. Essentially America's answer to the McLaren F1. A great track car, insane straight line performance, and I think it looks just fantastic. It's reminiscent of the long-tail Group C cars of the Le Mans, which we've already established I'm a huge fan of. My favourite version is not an obvious choice. I like the standard 550 horsepower model the best. It's still capable of 240 miles per hour, and I just like its naturally aspirated purity. In 15th position, my favourite concept car of all time, the Cadillac 16. What's not to like about this car? I think it is far better looking and far classier than any Rolls-Royce, Maybach, Bentley, any of that usual nonsense. It's far more exclusive because they only made one of them, and it has a 13.6 litre, 1000 horsepower V16 engine. It just oozes with pure class, and it's effortlessly cool. In 14th place, a car which is on, for a couple of reasons, this list. For the look, certainly to some degree, but more so because of what a technical achievement it is. And this car isn't a technical achievement in the way that something like a Veyron is. This car is actually an anti-Veyron. It does the exact opposite, but is similarly successful at what it does, because this car goes to the basics. It's an old school supercar designed for track racing, but it does it in a very mechanical, analog way, rather than using fancy computers and active aero and all that cars use now. But the funny thing is, without all of those technical advancements, this was more successful, to the point where in fact it was banned from all forms of FIA racing purely because it was too good. Now that's incredibly stupid as far as I'm concerned, and I've talked about that on the channel before, but at the same time, that's kind of awesome. In 13th place, another perhaps strange choice, the 1925 Doble E20. I love vintage cars, and as far as vintage cars go, this is another incredible technical achievement. Steam cars used to be very popular back in the 1910s, 1920s. They're not really used anymore. As far as steam cars go, though, this is pretty much the ultimate one. It was reliable, it started up quickly, it would run at a set temperature without overheating, and it produced more torque than a Veyron. It could do 135 miles per hour, which was no small thing at the time, and it's completely silent. It's just a cool car, and I love cars that have genuinely unique tech, and this certainly does. In 12th place, a car which I love mainly for its engine. My favourite engine of all time is the gas turbine, and this is a notable car in that regard because it's the only gas turbine powered race car to ever win a race, the 1968 Howmet TX, and I actually had the opportunity to talk to the current owner, and he said that it is as incredible to drive as you'd expect it to be. In 11th place, a car which I consider to be just a pure drivable piece of art. Mechanically based on the Ferrari Enzo, of course, the Maserati MC12 is less powerful and more obscure than the Enzo, with only 25 built, but funnily enough, faster around the track. Just a drivable piece of art, and I've always loved the MC12. Breaking into our official top 10 now, we start in 10th with perhaps a strange choice, the 1962 Lincoln Continental. Featured in a few notable movies such as The Matrix, I just love this car for pretty much the same reasons as the Tesla. It's about as different to the Tesla as you could get, but I love it for the same reasons. It's just a car which does everything I could personally want from a daily driver. It's not the fastest at anything, but it doesn't need to be. It has a 7-litre, 300 horsepower engine, suicide doors, aircon, electric windows, all in 1962 no less, and it's just an effortlessly cool car, in a similar way to the Cadillac 16. In 9th place, another representative model. We already discussed the Daytona Cobra, and overall the Cobra in all of its forms would have to be my favourite classic as an overall range of all time. My favourite specific Cobra though would have to be the 427, especially as you can see here without stripes. It's just a beautifully simple but stunningly effective all-round package. Purely mechanical, big meaty engine, one of the most steroid-esque bodies of any car ever made. It just looks like it's bursting from its own muscle mass, and it's a challenging car, which I also love as well. In 8th place, a relatively obscure pick, but a car which, ever since I first saw it, has been one of my favourites, the B Engineering Edonis, based of course on the Bugatti EB110, and one of the fastest supercars that most people have never heard of. 229 miles per hour from its quad-turbo V12, and only around 21 built. Obscure, and kind of a Marmite car as far as design. Personally, I love it. In 7th place, again, I've mentioned I'm a huge fan of electric cars, and this is one of the best you can get. And they actually did build some of these. I believe 8 is the number that comes to mind. The Mercedes SLS electric drive. I love the fact that it has an insane paint colour. It's faster off the line than the Black Series. It's electric, which is just inherently awesome as far as I'm concerned. All-wheel drive, handles extremely well despite being very, very heavy, and is ironically the most powerful production Mercedes ever made. In 6th place, another electric car, but one which just beats out the Mercedes due to just how awesome it is, the Rimac Concept One. This is a car which, when I first heard about it, I didn't really put much thought into because I didn't think it would get anywhere. Now though, they have built some, and for almost 700 grand you can buy an electric car with well over 1,000 horsepower, 220 miles per hour, and do 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds, and combine that with a design which I love because it doesn't fall into the common tropes of a small new company. It doesn't have big stupid wings, air intakes and louvers all over the place and a silly paint job. It's just understated, simple, unique and classy. In 5th place, the Pagani Zonda F, which used to actually be my favourite car, especially in Roadster form. Even though it's not my number one, I do consider strongly the Pagani Zonda F to be quite simply the best supercar ever made. It's perfect in every way. The Cinque, the Tricolore, all of the others did not improve it as far as I'm concerned. Sure, they're faster and more exclusive, but you just can't improve on the Zonda F. It's perfect. It's not the fastest, it doesn't need to be. It has a fantastic body, interior, sound, engine, performance, and it's worth more than double the price used than it was new. And it's not even a classic yet. Perfect. In 4th place, the Mercedes SLR McLaren, specifically the 722 Roadster. I've always loved the SLR. It has an incredible exhaust note similar to an old school warplane, supercharged V8, gull-wing doors, F1 style nose cone. It's just a simple, classy looking car. It oozes with muscle and power, and it's one of the relatively few big heavy supercars that can genuinely worry lightweight track cars. The 722 edition is my favourite purely because it adds some subtle carbon fibre styling detail changes, the suede interior, and a little bit of extra performance. In 3rd place, a car which was my dream car and is still very close to it, but any who already knew that this is my dream car will probably be surprised as to what has beaten it, but I do still consider this to be, like the Tesla, like the Zonda, an incredible, dare I say it, perfect all-round machine. It's a Ferrari, which I'm not a huge fan of, as you can see from this list overall, but it does everything you could possibly want from a daily driver whilst being a genuine supercar at the same time. It's a big car, it's all-wheel drive, it has almost Enzo levels of power, the acceleration and top speed are incredible, the handling is great thanks to the all-wheel drive, but it can actually seat 4 actual adults, not just 2 adults and 2 amputees, and put their luggage in the back. It's a perfect, everyday supercar. In second place though, the car which is now my new dream car. I wish they'd have put a little bit more effort into the design, but apart from that, this car is incredible. I looked into it recently due to doing another video and I fell in love with it. It's the Sauvage Rivale GTS, sometimes called the Road Yacht, which I don't really like, but it's powered by a 670 horsepower LS engine, capable of 205 miles per hour, and it's the world's only 4-door, 4-seater, convertible supercar. That's a ridiculous sentence, but the funny thing is, this car actually manages to pull that off perfectly. And for that, it's become my dream car. In first place though, not my dream car, but purely on paper my favourite car, is still the Cizeta V16T, purely in a similar way to the Howmet because of that engine. It's the only production V16 engine car ever made in the supercar class. There have been other 16 cylinders like the Veyron, but never any other V16. Not until of course the Devil 16 comes out, but we'll have to see about that. It's just such a cool car, and like with many people's number one favourites, I can't quite describe why it's my favourite. It just is. Not my dream car, but my favourite car. So if you've lasted this long throughout the entire list, well done, and feel free to put down in the comments below your top 10 or top 25 or top 100 even favourite cars. And for now, thanks for watching.